Over the past decade, many Caribbean nations have sought infrastructure investments from China, leading to economic growth alongside increase in debt. These investments have funded roads, ports, and energy projects, improving regional connectivity and economic potential. However, concerns have emerged over debt sustainability, as some countries struggle with repayment obligations. The reliance on Chinese financing has also raised questions about long-term economic dependence and the strategic implications of these agreements. While the investments have modernized infrastructure, managing the debt and ensuring balanced economic growth remain critical challenges for the region. In this video, let's dive into the top 10 Caribbean countries in 2025 that are most indebted to China, uncovering the deals, gains, and risks behind these financial ties. From Grenada's stadium renovations to Jamaica's transformative highways, we'll explore how these nations balance development with dependency. Could these investments be a lifeline or a looming crisis? Let's find out. Starting with Grenada at number 10. This scenic island country has used Chinese financing to restore and update its infrastructure. Grenada owes about $150 million to China, which amounts to almost 10% of its national debt, estimated at around $1.5 billion. China has been central to Grenada's infrastructural development in the past few years. One of the most high-profile projects involved restructuring the Grenada National Stadium after a hurricane damaged it. In addition to sporting facilities, these projects include massive road and bridge constructions meant to enhance connectivity on the island. Grenada's debt to GDP stands at 69%, based on the International Monetary Fund (IMF) data, which policymakers closely watch. The country's GDP is around $2.2 billion, while its public debt rises as it increases development projects. Analysts have warned that although the infrastructural improvements are enhancing tourism and local investment, the long-term sustainability of this debt is a significant concern, especially in a region prone to natural disasters. Grenada's real economic growth rate per annum is around 2.5%. However, with a vulnerable, small economy, even slight downturns in tourism or the world economy may hamper repayment attempts. The island plans to raise foreign direct investment (FDI) and diversify its economic base to efficiently service this debt. Next, at number 9, we have Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda is an island nation that has transformed through Chinese investments. According to an estimate, the country owes China $300 million, nearly 20% of its foreign debt. To put this into perspective, Antigua and Barbuda's external debt is around $1.5 billion. One of the flagship projects financed by Chinese loans is the expansion of the deepwater harbor. This has allowed larger cruise ships to dock, providing a massive stimulus to the tourism sector and increase in trade. Tourism remains the backbone of Antigua and Barbuda's economy, accounting for nearly 60% of its GDP. The country recorded a 4.1% increase in tourism revenue last year, despite the world travel issues. Chinese investment has funded the construction of affordable housing, civic centers, and harbor expansion. However, because the economy is so heavily dependent on tourism and vulnerable to hurricanes and other natural events, questions are being raised about the viability of this debt. The World Bank reports that Antigua and Barbuda's foreign debt has been increasing at an average annual rate of 4.2%, further complicating repayment capacity. The government aggressively seeks fiscal reforms and improved revenue collection to increase debt servicing capacity. The country also diversifies its economy by investing in digital infrastructure and renewable energy projects. Moving on to number 8, there is Cuba. You may be surprised to know that Cuba owes over $500 million to China. Some estimates suggest that the total Chinese exposure could be even higher when deferred payments on historical loans are factored in. This amount accounts for approximately 15% of Cuba's foreign debt obligations. China has been instrumental in modernizing Cuban infrastructure. Some significant projects include renovating the port of Mariel, now an important foreign trade hub, and investing in renewable energy, such as wind farms and solar panel installations. These renewable energy projects are intended to help Cuba reduce its consumption of fossil fuels and minimize energy imports, which have long been a burden on the economy. Cuba's economic problems are severe. The Cuban economy declined by 10.9% in 2020, partly due to the pandemic and US sanctions. This further strained the country's already thin financial resources. Cuba's GDP is estimated to be approximately $100 billion, though much of this is state-controlled and does not indicate free market performance. The country's overall foreign debt is around $3.3 billion, with Chinese loans accounting for a sizable portion, but only one piece of the broader debt puzzle. The repayment of these debts is uncertain, with continuing negotiations over restructuring terms and deferred payment schedules. Despite these obstacles, China continues to see Cuba as a strategic partner in the area, offering financing, technology, and experience to support Cuba's economic infrastructure. But Cuba isn't the only one deep into this debt. We have Dominican Republic at number 7. The Dominican Republic owes China over $600 million, nearly 5% of its GDP. With a GDP of over $12 billion, these loans represent a significant component of the country's overall economic structure. The Dominican Republic's relationship with China dramatically changed in 2018, when it switched diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China. Since then, Beijing has invested billions in projects ranging from highways and bridges to cutting-edge renewable energy plants. One remarkable example is the vast network of solar farms, which account for 8% of the nation's energy mix. However, all that glitters is not gold. The nation's trade deficit with China has been growing at an alarming 14% yearly, highlighting the double-edged nature of these financial ties. While Chinese lending has sped up long-stalled infrastructure development and awakened economic growth, recorded at a rate of 4.7% per year before the pandemic, the growing reliance on Chinese imported goods is a potential vulnerability. Economists have warned that the expanding trade deficit and increased external borrowing could undermine the country's long-term economic stability. Reacting to this, the government seeks to promote domestic industries and increase exports to reduce the trade gap and improve its debt servicing capacity. By the way, if you're finding this video insightful, please like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives like this. Thank you. Next up, at number 6, we have Trinidad and Tobago. At number 6, Trinidad and Tobago is a fascinating case of a nation balancing significant natural resource wealth with increasing external debt. The twin island nation owes China approximately $750 million, or roughly 12% of its external debt. Trinidad and Tobago, with a GDP of approximately $20 billion, has traditionally relied on its robust oil and gas sector, which accounts for nearly 40% of GDP, to finance development. Some of the major projects include the Cuba Children's Hospital, a state-of-the-art hospital that has improved healthcare for thousands of people. Chinese investments have also sparked significant investments in the transport infrastructure in Port of Spain, boosting connectivity and economic activities. However, the volatility of the global oil market poses fundamental challenges. In 2020, oil prices collapsed by 35%, impacting government revenues. Although prices have recovered in subsequent years, the inherent volatility in the energy market means that reliance on oil and gas revenues to service debt can be risky. Current government projections suggest that oil and gas revenues can fluctuate by up to 20% yearly, affecting the nation's ability to service debt regularly. Trinidad and Tobago is diversifying its economy by investing in renewable energy and tourism. The government is also undertaking fiscal reforms to make infrastructure spending more efficient and ensure it is converted into sustainable economic growth. Coming in at number 5, we have Suriname. Thanks to Chinese financial help, Suriname has experienced rapid modernization. However, its debt to China is over $800 million, nearly 30% of its GDP. With a GDP of roughly $2.7 billion, this high level of debt has caused economists to be concerned. Suriname's Chinese-funded initiatives have primarily concentrated on new bridges, road expansion, and agricultural modernization. These aim to improve connectivity and increase export capacity in a country rich in natural resources such as bauxite and gold. However, with the debt-to-GDP ratio of 85%, the margin for error is exceedingly narrow. Volatile commodity prices and exogenous shocks have complicated Suriname's economic problems. Inflation has remained at around 8%, while economic growth has been volatile, averaging approximately 2% in recent years. Given these issues, the government is pressured to compromise required infrastructure investments and prudent fiscal management. Analysts say that investments can transform the economy and lead to long-term dependency if not appropriately managed. The government intends to restructure some of these loans and strengthen fiscal transparency to ensure that Chinese investments contribute to long-term economic outcomes rather than the perpetual debt dependence. Moving on to number 4. Guyana is a fascinating combination of both old issues and new opportunities. With a debt of nearly $900 million to China, which is approximately 15% of its GDP, Guyana has historically relied on Chinese financing for its significant infrastructure projects. Projects like the Georgetown-Leetham Road have opened trade relations with its neighbor Brazil and regional trade. However, the recent discovery of vast oil reserves has transformed Guyana's economic landscape. The nation will gain an estimated $5 billion annually from oil production, which could transform its fiscal landscape. As oil revenues stream, the nation's GDP will grow at a modest $6 billion. This newfound wealth presents a good chance to pay off its existing debt. Guyana's rapid economic transformation has raised questions about the effective management of oil proceeds and the potential for fiscal instability. The government is setting up the Sovereign Wealth Fund to smooth the economy and maintain debt repayment as a priority. Properly managed, Guyana can serve as a model for resource-rich nations to transition from debt dependency to fiscal stability. Guyana's inflation rate has been managed at 4%, and its yearly economic growth is set to hit 8% in the next half-decade. Pointers indicate a guardedly optimistic way forward. And now, we have our top 3 names on this list. Standing at number 3, Barbados, a nation famously rich in culture and a booming tourism industry. However, what you don't know is that Barbados holds roughly $1 billion in debt owed to China. While a significant figure, this debt is part of a financial strategy to modernize the country's infrastructure. Tourism generates about 50% of Barbados's GDP and has been a significant recipient of these investments. Some of the priority projects include development of luxury resorts and significant road developments that have improved connectivity across the island. In addition, the Chinese loans have been used to develop the nation's port facilities, enhancing its role as a regional trading hub. Barbados's external debt now stands at approximately $2.2 billion, with the Chinese portion being a significant slice. The nation's debt-to-GDP ratio is approximately 60%, a figure the government is working hard to keep in check through fiscal consolidation and increased tourism receipts. Barbados expanded 5.3% in tourism and 2.1% in overall GDP in 2023, suggesting that the nation's economic fundamentals remain strong despite the debt. Government officials have emphasized that the investments aim to yield long-term benefits, such as improved trade performance and public services. However, the challenge is to ensure that the debt does not interfere with the future economic flexibility and that repayment schedules are met without compromising social spending. Our runner-up at number 2 is the Bahamas, a nation that has captivated the world with its natural beauty and pursued a complex romance with Chinese financing. The Bahamas owes an estimated $1.9 billion in Chinese debt, roughly 22% of its GDP. With a GDP of around $8.6 billion, these loans are critical to the nation's fiscal obligations. Chinese investments in the Bahamas have targeted the upgrading of its infrastructure. Some of the significant projects include building luxury resorts, expanding the Nassau International Airport, and expanding the massive road network that has boosted tourism and local businesses. The Bahamas has also witnessed a 15% growth in port throughput in recent years, a direct benefit of better infrastructure thanks to Chinese loans. Tourism remains the backbone of the Bahamian economy, representing nearly 40% of the country's GDP. The recent resurgence in global tourism has seen a 6% annual growth in visitors, a source of revenue to help aid in debt servicing. However, the high percentage of GDP tied up in foreign debt remains a concern. The government is aggressively exploring strategies to diversify its revenues, including technology and renewable energy investments, to reduce the necessity of future borrowings and create a more resilient economy. And finally, on the top of the list, we have Jamaica. Chinese loans in this nation have played a significant role in modernizing and stabilizing the economy. Jamaica owes China approximately $2.1 billion, constituting 28% of its GDP. Jamaica's GDP is estimated at $7.5 billion, so this debt represents a significant portion of its external debt. Over the past decade, Chinese investments in Jamaica have targeted significant infrastructure projects like Highway 2000, revolutionizing transport and logistics across the island. Urban areas like Kingston have undergone widespread urban renewal schemes funded by Chinese investment. They have enhanced transport and public services and promoted economic development in significant sectors such as tourism and manufacturing. Tourism accounts for nearly 30% of Jamaica's GDP, and the country has been using a series of fiscal policy reforms to directly apply increased tourism revenues to debt repayment. Over recent years, Jamaica has reduced its overall public debt from over 100% of GDP to around 85%, a positive indication of gradual fiscal stabilization. However, the path ahead is packed with challenges, including global economic uncertainties and the potential for natural disasters. Projections indicate that Jamaica will significantly improve its debt servicing capacity if it can sustain a 3.5% annual GDP growth rate while ensuring prudent fiscal management. The government is also negotiating with international financial institutions to secure better terms for future loans so that Chinese financing remains a source for growth rather than dependence. From Grenada's stadiums to Jamaica's highways, Chinese investments have undeniably transformed the Caribbean, bringing opportunities and challenges. While the road ahead is filled with economic uncertainties, these nations have the resilience and potential to turn debt into sustainable growth. The Caribbean can chart a path forward, a brighter, more independent future by embracing diversification, fiscal responsibility, and innovation. What are your thoughts on balancing development and debt in the Caribbean? Do you think these investments will lead to long-term growth or create dependency? Let us know your comments below. We'd love to know your insights. Check out this video on the 10 most indebted Caribbean countries. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends who are interested in knowing more about the Caribbean economy, and hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on more in-depth analysis like this. Don't forget, turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. This is Caribbean Focused Lifestyle. See you in the next video.